Well, welcome, folks. Today we are making my popular steadfast design, and we're starting with a laminated billet of steel composed of a 1095 core and a high nickel mild steel jacket. The specific alloy being A203E, and the reason why I use the high nickel as the jacket is it produces a nice contrast when it's etched. So here I am just rolling out the billet. This is a little hand-powered rolling mill that is initially intended for jewelry. However, because I am not a jeweler and I wanted a rolling mill, I use it for my knives, and it's not going to be as industrial as some other rolling mills, but for doing blades and just getting them to the correct thickness, it actually works really well. And it could obviously be mounted a little bit better on the table, but it allows me to dial in the thickness of the blade really easily, and that crank wheel at the top allows it to be adjusted very finely, so I can get all my blades to the correct thickness and not really have to worry about like a low spot in them. Now I am going to separate the shoulders from the blade, which is where the blade and the tang meet. Those are the shoulders. And that tool is called a guillotine tool. It just pinches the material down in one really consistent area to where now I can start hammering out the tang. This is a hidden tang style knife, and I do this a lot. It's my preferred way to make a knife. You can do a lot more handle options, and in my opinion, if you do it correctly, it's actually stronger than a full tang. So I did some grinding off camera. Now I'm doing a normalized cycle, which just kind of helps refine the internal grain structure of the steel, making for a stronger knife that's going to stay sharper and overall be a more durable product. And I do that 3 times, and here I am now heating up my quench bucket, and I'm a water quench guy. So to have the best success water quenching, the water needs to be warm, probably around 120 degrees or so. And then I heat up my blade to the critical temperature, which is around 1500 degrees, and boom, I quench. And I also only leave it in there, I don't know, 8-10 seconds, something like that. And then because I use a solid fuel forge, I can go ahead and scrub the surface with sandpaper so I can see bare steel again. And then I can go over the hot coals and temper it. And the tempering will reduce some of the hardness in the blade, making it tougher and making a really, really high quality product. And since the forge is hot, you might as well use the radiant heat from the coals. And I go till I see a nice kind of golden brown color on the blade, much like a perfectly toasted marshmallow. So at this point in the process, now I am ready to burn the tang into the handle block, which is a really gorgeous piece of California redwood burl. So I heat the tang up with the torch. There's a hole pre-drilled in the block, and now I use the tang to just burn a perfect cavity into the block of wood. That way it's a perfect fit. And speaking of perfect cavities, your mom's got one too. Anyways, you can see how well that fits in there now. And now we can polish the blade. So this is a new system for me. Basically, I have a potter's wheel, and I bought these Japanese sharpening stones, and there's just 4 bolts that hold it in place, and it creates a perfectly flat surface to polish the blade from. And because the stone is so wide, I think they're maybe 12-14 inches in diameter, it means that I can flatly, I can precisely and flatly, we'll go with it, polish the blade and get all the low spots out. Makes for a really consistent result. And that first stone was a 400, and then I go up to 1,000 grit, and then I go back to 320 with the sandpaper, and it makes it to where I can polish a blade completely just by using one strip of sandpaper on each side, which is really wonderful. So I like to use copper for my guards a lot. It's easy to work with. And here I am using a jeweler's saw to get the tang slot cut out. And the saw is nice, it's precise, which is good. Um, there's different methods to do this. Don't be that nerd that just drills a bunch of holes and files it. That's so inefficient with your time. Get yourself a jeweler's saw or hot punch the thing. I mean, damn. Anyway, we'll get that thing cut out, and you can get these pretty precise if you scribe your lines well and you measure, and you can get a pretty tight fit. And that copper also does get pretty hot when you're sawing it, which is why I couldn't hold on to it the entire time. Gorgeous. So no filing has been done at all. So now I'm going to smack the copper down over the shoulders of the tang till it all meets up properly. And if you do a good job sawing, you don't have to use a needle file or anything on this. You can just kind of let the copper be malleable and work around the tang. So now that that's all fit, now we can do one of my favorite parts, which is soldering the guard on. And this took me a long time to learn how to do well. And it's one of those skills that just takes a lot of practice. And the reason I left this part of the video long is to pretty much show you in real time the process to hopefully make it to where you can learn from it. Because there are videos on how to do this, but none of them are that great. And it left me having to do a tremendous amount of trial and error on my end to figure out how to do it. So this is in real time how we go. So we're heating up the base plate, which is pushing up on the copper guard. And then here's a pro tip. Put your flux in a syringe. That way you don't have to use very much of it and it doesn't get everywhere. You can just use a little bit. It's nice and controlled. And the idea here is we're heating up the blade and the guard together. You can see the flame is kind of touching that big base plate of steel, so that's getting hot too. And the main reason why soldering doesn't work is if both of your pieces are not at the right temperature. If just your guard is at the right temperature but your blade isn't, it's not going to stick to the blade, and vice versa. So we want a nice slow, even heat along the whole piece, and you want to check it with the wire to see if it starts melting, and boom, you see that? It's starting to flow into that joint. That's exactly what we want. Once you get a little solder laid on there, then you can just go around the entire perimeter of the solder joint, making sure there's solder everywhere, trying not to glob too much on so it's not a big job to clean up. And then you just make sure every little gap is filled. And if you take your time and your parts are the right temperature, you're going to have a perfect solder joint every time. So, as you might be able to tell, I don't really use a whole lot of power tools, mostly because I don't really have power in my shop. So, here I am using a farrier's rasp to rough in the shape of the handle. It's obviously all glued together, and those farrier's rasps make quick work of this. Then I follow it with a finer rasp. This one's actually, it's not technically a rasp. It's made for soft metals like aluminum and copper, which is great for doing the transition from the copper to the handle. Makes it easy. Followed by sanding to 400 grit. And now one of my favorite parts, which is oiling with Danish oil. And it really makes that redwood burl absolutely pop. It really is gorgeous. Oil finishes, in my opinion, are the way to go. They really preserve the natural look of the wood. They're not like this plastic coating that you're then hanging on to while you're using the knife. They just feel really good and look gorgeous and are also really easy to maintain. You just throw another coat of oil on when it needs it. And then here we are, the mystery jar. This is filled with gator piss, which is actually an acid blend, and this really reveals that laminate blade. Shows all the layers. You can see how bright those high nickel mild outer layers are. Finally, this is a 1200 grit diamond stone, Everything is pretty much sharpened before this. This is just the final edge. Gets it absolutely wickedly sharp. So I'll do a couple passes on the diamond stone followed by a strop with green compound. And let's see if it's sharp. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That is, it's a razor. You can shave your entire body with that thing. And when I say your entire body, I really do mean your entire body. Boom, look at that. Gorgeous blade. Really happy with how it came out. And I hope the customer enjoys using it. Alright guys, cheers.